A billionaire, Alexander Kowalski, saves a war refugee Maya Nowak by pretending she was his girlfriend. He didn't expect that. How far would you go to protect someone you just met? Watch until the end to unravel this mystery. Before we continue, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching the video from. And don't forget to subscribe. In the heart of Warsaw, the streets were alive with the sounds of bustling traffic and the distant echo of street musicians playing soulful melodies. Among the throng of people, Alexander Kowalski, a Polish billionaire, walked with purpose, his tailored suit clinging to his tall frame. His deep blue eyes, shadowed with a hint of sadness, gazed at the world around him, but he was not truly present. Instead, his mind was a swirling tempest of memories, haunted by a past he wished to forget. Alexander was known for his success in the business world, a man who had built an empire from the ground up. Yet, beneath his polished exterior, he carried the weight of guilt and loss. The charity shelter he frequented was a sanctuary for war refugees, a place where he could momentarily escape his privileged life and confront the stark realities that others faced. It was here, amidst the palpable sorrow and resilience of the displaced, that he felt a flicker of purpose. On this particular day, as Alexander entered the shelter, the familiar scent of soup wafted through the air, mingling with the sound of quiet conversations. Rows of makeshift beds lined the walls, occupied by weary souls seeking refuge from the horrors of their homeland. His gaze fell upon a group of women gathered in a corner, sharing stories in hushed tones. Among them was Maya, a woman who had caught his attention from the very first moment he saw her. Maya was striking, though not in the conventional sense. Her hair, dark and unkempt, framed a face that told tales of hardship and resilience. She had fled her war-torn country with her young daughter, Anya, clinging to her side. Despite the chaos surrounding her, Maya exuded a quiet strength that drew Alexander in. Yet, he sensed an impenetrable wall around her, a wariness of men that made her reluctant to engage. As he approached, Maya looked up, her eyes flickering with caution. "I'm here to help," he said softly, attempting to bridge the chasm between them. "Is there anything you need?" Maya's expression hardened, a mixture of gratitude and suspicion. "We're fine," she replied curtly, turning her attention back to Anya, who was busy coloring with a few broken crayons on a piece of scrap paper. The little girl's laughter was a stark contrast to the somber atmosphere, and for a brief moment, Alexander felt a warmth in his chest. "Please," he insisted, his voice earnest. "I want to help. You are safe here, but I can do more." "More?" Maya's tone was skeptical, her brow furrowing. "What could you possibly do?" "I run a charity foundation," he explained, his heart racing as he sensed her interest peaking. "I can provide support, resources, anything you need." Maya studied him for a moment, her eyes narrowing as if weighing his intentions. "And what do you want in return?" she challenged, her voice steady. "Nothing comes free." "True enough," he admitted, his gaze unwavering. "But I assure you, my intentions are honorable. Just let me help you." It was a tenuous beginning, but as days turned into weeks, Maya began to let down her guard, albeit slowly. She shared snippets of her life with him, how she and Anya had escaped the conflict, the horrors they had witnessed, and the dreams she once held before everything shattered. Each story was a thread that began to weave a complex tapestry of trust between them. One afternoon, as Maya sat in a small circle with other refugees, sharing her story of survival, Alexander listened intently from a distance. Her voice trembled with emotion as she recounted the day they fled, the chaos of gunfire echoing in her ears, and her desperate struggle to keep Anya safe. "They're still looking for us," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "A group, dangerous men. They won't stop until they find me." Alexander's heart sank. He had heard whispers of such groups, mercenaries known to track down those who escaped their clutches. He felt an urgent need to intervene. As the meeting dispersed, he approached Maya, his expression grave. "Maya," he said, his voice firm yet gentle, "I overheard what you shared. You're in danger. You need protection." Maya's eyes widened, a mix of fear and defiance flickering across her face. "And what do you propose?" "I can't hide forever. Let me help you," he urged, his voice steady. "I can offer you and Anya a safe place. But there's a catch. You need to pose as my girlfriend." Maya stared at him, disbelief etched in her features. "What?" she exclaimed, incredulous. "You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend? Why would I do that?" "Because it's your only chance," Alexander replied, desperation creeping into his tone. "If they think you're with me, they'll be less likely to come after you. I can protect you, but you need to trust me." Maya hesitated, her mind racing. The idea was absurd, yet the alternative was fraught with uncertainty and danger. "I don't know. It feels wrong," she murmured, her voice wavering. "I promise it's just a facade," he reassured her, his sincerity evident in his gaze. "I'll do everything in my power to keep you safe. You and Anya deserve a chance." After what felt like an eternity, Maya finally nodded, albeit reluctantly. "Okay," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I'll do it, but only for Anya's sake." As they prepared for their new arrangement, Alexander introduced Maya to his affluent world, a stark contrast to the shelter's confines. The first event they attended was a charity gala hosted by one of his business partners. Maya felt like a fish out of water, the glitzy surroundings overwhelming her senses. The laughter and chatter of the elite felt foreign, and she clutched Anya's hand tightly, searching for a sense of belonging that eluded her. "Just follow my lead," Alexander whispered to her as they entered the venue. His confident demeanor seemed to draw attention, and Maya felt the weight of countless eyes upon her. She wore an elegant dress borrowed from one of Alexander's acquaintances, yet it felt like a costume, beautiful yet wholly unrepresentative of who she was. As the night unfolded, Alexander introduced her to various guests, each interaction filled with polite smiles and superficial pleasantries. "This is Maya, my girlfriend," he would say, and while the words felt strange on his tongue, they also provided a sense of security to Maya. She played her role, smiling and nodding, yet inside, she felt like an imposter. "Are you enjoying yourself?" Alexander asked, leaning closer as they stepped away from a group of socialites. Maya forced a smile. "It's different," she replied, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "I'm not sure I belong here." "You do," he insisted, his eyes softening. "You're strong, capable. You've survived so much. Just remember, this is temporary. We're doing this for your safety." As the evening wore on, Maya found herself caught between two worlds, the one she had left behind and this new life that was just beginning to unfold. She watched Alexander navigate the crowd, his charm disarming everyone around him. But beneath that confident exterior, she sensed a vulnerability, a loneliness that mirrored her own. "Can I ask you something?" she said hesitantly as they stood on the balcony, looking out at the city lights twinkling like stars. "Anything," he replied, turning to face her. "Why are you helping me?" "You could have anyone in this room," she said, her brow furrowing. "What's in it for you?" Alexander paused, his expression shifting. "I see the strength in you, Maya. You remind me of someone I once knew, someone I lost. Helping you feels, right?" A silence hung between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Maya felt the weight of his words settle over her, and for the first time, she saw a glimpse of the man behind the billionaire facade, a man grappling with his own demons, seeking redemption through her. As the night drew to a close, Maya felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. Perhaps, in this strange arrangement, they could both find what they were searching for: safety for her and a chance at solace for him. Yet, in the shadows of the glamorous event, the looming threat of her past remained, a constant reminder that their journey was just beginning. As the sun dipped low over the gilded spires of Warsaw, casting a warm glow across the city, Maya found herself seated in a lavish dining room, surrounded by opulence she had never imagined. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses echoed around her as Alexander's family gathered for dinner. She sat at the edge of the table, feeling like an intruder in a world of wealth and privilege. A crystal chandelier sparkled above, and the aroma of exquisite cuisine wafted through the air, but her heart raced for an entirely different reason. Helena, Alexander's mother, was seated across from her, her sharp blue eyes scrutinizing Maya with an intensity that made her stomach churn. The older woman had an air of authority, her perfectly coiffed hair and tailored dress exuding a sense of power that intimidated Maya. "So, Maya," Helena began, her tone cool and measured, "tell us about your life before Alexander whisked you away into this wonderful world." Maya hesitated, glancing at Alexander, who offered her a reassuring smile. I was just a teacher," she replied, her voice steady despite the weight of judgment hanging in the air. "My life was simple. I taught children, and I dreamed of a better future for my daughter." "A teacher?" Helena echoed, raising an eyebrow. "And what is it that you teach?" "Literature," Maya said, finding strength in her passion. "I love stories. They give hope, inspire dreams. Even in the darkest times, stories can light the way." "Stories," Helena mused, a hint of skepticism in her voice. "But surely you understand that Alexander is a successful businessman. He needs someone who understands his world, someone who can contribute to his status." At that moment, Maya felt the weight of her past press heavily on her shoulders. She had never intended to be a burden. "I'm not after his money," she said, her voice firm. "I just want to keep my daughter safe. Alexander has been kind to us and He's a billionaire, Maya," Helena interrupted sharply. "People like us are not easily fooled. You must understand that Alexander's heart is at stake." "I don't want his money or his status," Maya insisted, her voice trembling slightly. "I just want to be a good mother." Alexander reached over, placing his hand on hers, an anchor in the storm of tension swirling around them. "My mother is only concerned for me, Maya," he said softly. "But I know what you've been through. I believe in you." Helena regarded her son with a mixture of frustration and disbelief. "What do you see in her, Alexander? You have a future to protect, a legacy to uphold. Are you willing to gamble it all on a woman with a sketchy past?" Maya's heart sank. She could feel the scrutiny of the entire room upon her, each gaze heavy with judgment. "I didn't choose my past," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm just trying to protect my daughter from the horrors we left behind." Helena's expression softened, if only for a fleeting moment. "And what if your past catches up with you? What if these dangers threaten Alexander as well?" "I'll do whatever it takes to keep him safe," Maya replied, her determination rising anew. "But I need his help to do that. I'm not asking for much, just a chance to show you all that I am worthy." The silence that followed was thick enough to cut through. Alexander's gaze shifted between his mother and Maya, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on him. "Maya is not a threat, Mother. She's a survivor, and I will not let you dismiss her simply because she doesn't fit your idea of perfection." "Perfection is not the issue here, Alexander," Helena said, her voice icy. "It's about ensuring you are not taken advantage of. I've seen it before, and I will not allow it to happen to you again." Maya felt her cheeks flush with shame, the weight of her past bearing down heavier than ever before. Her thoughts were spiraling as she tried to make sense of the hostility directed at her. "I'm not looking for a handout," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm just trying to build a life for my daughter." Alexander's grip on her hand tightened, a silent vow of support. "We're in this together, Maya," he said softly. "I won't let my family's prejudice dictate how we move forward." Helena's expression softened for just a heartbeat before she masked it with disapproval. "We'll see how this plays out, Alexander. But I won't stand by and watch you be taken advantage of." As the dinner progressed, Maya felt increasingly isolated, her thoughts racing. She excused herself to the bathroom, needing a moment to breathe. She splashed cold water on her face, staring at her reflection in the mirror. "What am I doing here?" she whispered to herself. "I'm a war refugee pretending to be someone's girlfriend. I don't belong in this world." Just as she was about to step out of the restroom, her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a message from an old friend back home, the one she had thought she could trust. "Maya, they're still looking for you. You need to be careful. They are close. Time is running out." Panic surged through her, the walls of the restroom closing in as she read the message again. She had hoped to leave her past behind, but it seemed it was haunting her still. Her heart raced, and she quickly texted back, "What do you mean? Who is looking for me? Just be safe. Don't trust anyone," her friend replied cryptically. Maya took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She couldn't let Alexander see her fear. He was already under enough pressure from his family, but she needed to confide in him. The weight of keeping her past a secret was becoming unbearable, and she feared it would only serve to drive a wedge between them. Returning to the dining room, Maya found Alexander deep in conversation with his mother, both their faces drawn tight with tension. The moment he noticed her approach, his expression softened, but she could see the flicker of concern in his eyes. "Maya, are you all right?" he asked, genuine worry lacing his voice. Taking a steadying breath, she nodded, though the turmoil inside her threatened to spill over. "I need to talk to you," she said quietly, glancing at Helena, who was now watching them with an expression that was a mix of curiosity and suspicion. "Let's step outside," Alexander suggested, rising from his chair. He glanced at his mother, who gave him a curt nod, her expression unreadable. Outside, the cool evening air wrapped around them like a comforting embrace. Maya leaned against the balcony railing, staring out at the city that had become both a refuge and a prison. "I received a message from a friend," she began, her voice shaky. "They're still looking for me, Alexander. The group I fled from." "What do you mean?" he interrupted, his brow furrowing with concern. "Are you in danger?" "I don't know how close they are, but I can't risk putting you and Anya in harm's way," she said, her voice trembling as she fought to keep her emotions in check. "I thought I could escape my past, but it seems it's still chasing me." Alexander stepped closer, his presence grounding her. "Maya, you don't have to go through this alone. I want to help you. I promise I'll keep you safe." "I don't want to be a burden," Maya said, tears brimming in her eyes. "I don't want to drag you into my mess." "Being with you is not a burden," he replied, his voice firm. "You mean something to me, more than I ever thought possible. I won't let anyone hurt you. We'll figure this out together." Maya's heart swelled at his words, yet the fear of losing him loomed large. "I can't let you risk everything for me," she whispered, her voice breaking. Alexander cupped her face in his hands. "You're not a burden, Maya. You're a survivor, and I won't let anyone take you away from me." As they stood there, the city lights twinkling like stars below them, Maya felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps Alexander could be her ally, her protector. But the shadows of her past loomed larger than ever, whispering reminders that danger was never far behind. Unbeknownst to them, a figure lurked in the shadows, watching, waiting. The promise of safety felt fragile against the encroaching darkness, and Maya knew the road ahead would be fraught with peril. But in that moment, standing with Alexander, she allowed herself to believe in the possibility of a future where love could conquer the ghosts of her past. The sun had barely risen over Warsaw when Maya jolted awake, her heart racing. She glanced around the modest room she shared with Anya, a sense of dread pooling in her stomach. The early morning light filtered through the window, illuminating the shadows that danced on the walls, but it was the absence of Anya's soft breathing that set Maya's pulse pounding. "Anya," she called out, her voice trembling. She threw off the thin blanket and rushed to the door, flinging it open. Panic seized her as she scanned the small apartment. "Anya!" Maya's voice echoed in the empty halls, but there was no response. Fear clawed at her chest, and she sprinted down the stairs, her heart pounding louder with each step. She burst into the small living area of the charity shelter where they had been staying, but Anya was nowhere to be found. "Maya!" Alexander's deep voice called from the entrance. He had arrived before her, worry etched on his handsome features. "What's wrong?" "Anya's missing," Maya gasped, her breath coming in sharp bursts. "I can't find her." Alexander's expression shifted from concern to urgency. "What do you mean she's missing? How long has she been gone?" "I don't know. I fell asleep, and she must have. I don't know where she is." Maya's voice rose in panic, her eyes wide and wild. "Stay calm," Alexander said firmly, stepping closer. His presence was grounding, but the fear in Maya's eyes was palpable. We'll find her. Let's check the grounds first. They rushed out, scanning the area surrounding the shelter. Maya's mind raced with thoughts of the dangerous group that had been after her. What if they had found Anya? The mere thought sent chills down her spine. Anya! Maya cried out, her voice breaking. Please, answer me. Have you checked the park? Alexander suggested, his brows furrowing. She loves to play there. Yes, of course. Maya's heart leaped at the thought. I should have thought of that immediately. They hurried to the park, the sun now fully risen and casting a warm glow over the playground. Maya's heart raced as they approached, her eyes scanning the swings and slides. Anya! She shouted, desperation lacing her voice. As they drew closer, Maya spotted a familiar figure. There, under the shade of a large oak tree, Anya sat happily swinging her legs, completely engrossed in a game with a few other children. Maya's heart swelled with relief, but it was short-lived as she noticed a figure lurking in the background, watching them. Maya, Alexander whispered, his voice low and tense. Maya turned to see the same mysterious figure from the gala, lurking just beyond the edge of the park. The figure wore a dark hoodie that obscured their face, but Maya felt a knot of dread tighten in her stomach. Let's get Anya and leave, Alexander said, his grip on her shoulder tightening. Maya nodded, her heart racing again. But before they could approach Anya, the figure stepped out of the shadows, moving towards them with a purpose. Who are you? Alexander demanded, stepping protectively in front of Maya. The figure halted, and for a moment, everything felt suspended in time. Maya's heart pounded in her chest, and she felt a primal urge to protect Anya, who remained blissfully unaware of the danger. Just someone looking for Maya, the figure replied, their voice low and menacing. Leave her alone, Alexander shouted, stepping forward, ready to confront the danger that loomed over them. The figure chuckled darkly, and Maya felt a chill run down her spine. You don't understand, do you? She's in danger, and you're both in way over your heads. Before Alexander could respond, Maya grabbed his arm. Let's just go, she urged, fear coursing through her veins. We can't let them get to Anya. Get away from her, Alexander shouted again. But Maya tugged him back, her eyes pleading with him to understand the gravity of their situation. In that moment, Anya's laughter cut through the tension as she ran towards them, her innocent joy starkly contrasting with the dark threat looming in front of them. Mama, look, I made new friends. Maya knelt down, enveloping Anya in her arms. You scared me, sweetheart. You can't just wander off like that. But I was just playing. Anya protested, her eyes wide with confusion. Maya's heart ached, and she felt a wave of guilt wash over her. She should be protecting her daughter, not dragging her into a world of danger. She shot a glance back at the figure, who stood there, watching them with an unnerving intensity. Enough of this, the figure said, their tone shifting. Maya, you can't hide forever. We will find you. Alexander stepped forward again, his jaw clenched. You'll have to go through me first. The figure smirked, but before they could say anything else, Maya grabbed Alexander's arm. We need to leave. Now. As they turned to walk away, Maya's heart raced with terror, and she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Once they were safely back in Alexander's car, Maya took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. Anya was in the back seat, fidgeting with her toys, blissfully unaware of the danger that had just hovered so closely over them. Maya, are you okay? Alexander asked, glancing at her with concern. I don't know, she admitted, her voice shaky. I'm scared. They won't stop. Alexander's expression hardened. Then we need to go into hiding. We can't let them find you or Anya. Maya nodded, the weight of his words settling heavily on her shoulders. But where? I don't want to put you in danger. Stop worrying about me, he said firmly. You and Anya are my priority now. My family has a cabin in the woods. It's secluded, and no one will find us there. Maya hesitated, fear creeping back in. What if they follow us? They won't. We'll take precautions. We'll leave now, and I won't let anything happen to you, he said. his voice steady and reassuring. "Okay," Maya whispered, a mix of fear and hope swirling inside her. "Let's go." As they drove, Maya found herself stealing glances at Alexander, who was focused on the road ahead. There was a strength in him that made her feel safe, yet the lingering threat of her past loomed like a dark cloud. When they finally reached the cabin, nestled at the edge of a serene lake surrounded by towering trees, Maya's heart felt heavy. It was beautiful, but it was also a reminder of how far she had fallen from the life she once knew. "Welcome to our safe haven," Alexander said softly, breaking the silence. Maya forced a smile, but the reality of their situation pressed down on her. "It's beautiful," she replied, but her voice lacked enthusiasm. As they stepped inside, the warmth of the cabin contrasted sharply with the chill in Maya's heart. Anya scampered in, exploring the space, her laughter echoing off the wooden walls. Maya watched her daughter with a bittersweet ache, wishing she could shield her from this world of fear. "Let's get settled," Alexander said, breaking her reverie. "We'll figure out our next steps, and I promise to keep you both safe." Maya nodded, but deep down, the fear of her past creeping back into their lives gnawed at her. She knew she had to confront her feelings for Alexander, but the anxiety of their situation made it difficult to focus on anything else. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Maya stood on the porch, staring out at the tranquil lake. The beauty around her felt surreal, and for a moment, she allowed herself to dream of a life without fear. "Are you all right?" Alexander's voice broke through her thoughts. Maya turned to face him, her heart racing. "I'm just thinking about everything." "Me too," he admitted, stepping closer. "But we'll get through this together." For the first time, Maya saw a glimmer of hope in his eyes. But as she met his gaze, the shadows of doubt and fear loomed larger in her mind, threatening to pull her back into the darkness she was trying to escape. "Together," she echoed. But the uncertainty lingered in her heart, a reminder that the past was never far behind. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows through the trees surrounding the secluded cabin, Maya found herself sitting on the porch, her heart heavy with conflicting emotions. Alexander had prepared the space with tenderness, filling it with soft blankets and the comforting aroma of wood smoke from the fireplace inside. It was a far cry from the chaos of the city, yet it felt strangely suffocating. "Maya," Alexander called gently, stepping out onto the porch, his presence a calming force. "Are you all right?" His brow furrowed with concern, and she could see the warmth in his deep blue eyes. She offered a weak smile, but it did little to mask the turmoil within. "Just thinking," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. The weight of her past pressed heavily on her chest, and despite the safety that Alexander had promised, she felt the shadows of her former life creeping back, taunting her with the memories of fear and loss. "About the war?" he asked, taking a seat beside her. The wood creaked under his weight, and he leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, his gaze fixed on her. "You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to." Maya stared at the ground, tracing patterns in the dirt with her finger. "It's not just the war," she said finally, her voice trembling. "It's everything that happened after. The people I lost. The people who are still looking for me." She felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, but blinked them away. She couldn't show weakness, not now, when Alexander had done so much for her and Anya. Alexander reached out, his hand brushing against hers. "You're safe here, Maya. I won't let anything happen to you or Anya. You have to believe that." He squeezed her hand gently, and warmth flooded through her, momentarily dispelling her fears. "But at what cost?" she asked, her voice rising slightly. "You don't understand what I'm dragging you into. You have a life, a reputation. I'm a refugee, and my past is dangerous." She pulled her hand away, the warmth replaced by a cold dread. "I can't let you risk everything for me." His expression darkened, and he turned to face her fully. "And what about you? Does your life mean so little that you're willing to run away?" "Maya, he hesitated, looking for the right words. "I care about you. I won't stand by and let you push me away. You deserve to feel safe, to live without fear." She met his gaze, the intensity in his eyes stirring something deep within her. You don't know what you're asking for. If they find me, they won't just come after me. They'll come after you and Anya too. Then let me help you fight back. We can face this together, he insisted, his voice firm. I've seen the strength in you, and I admire it. But you don't have to bear this burden alone. Maya felt a flicker of hope at his words, but quickly extinguished it. I wish it were that simple. You don't know the extent of their reach. They have eyes everywhere. Silence fell between them, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Maya's heart raced as she thought about what it would mean for Alexander to be dragged into her life, a life marked by suffering and fear. She could not afford to let that happen. The wind rustled through the trees, and she shivered slightly, pulling her shawl tighter around her shoulders. Alexander noticed and stood up, moving back inside the cabin. He returned moments later with a thick blanket, draping it over her shoulders with a gentle touch. Let's go inside. It's getting cold, he said softly, his voice laced with a tenderness that made her heart ache. As they settled into the warmth of the cabin, Maya leaned back against the plush cushions of the sofa, watching as Alexander stoked the fire. The flames flickered, casting dancing shadows across the walls. The cozy atmosphere did little to ease the storm brewing inside her. After a moment, Alexander turned to her, his expression serious. Maya, I want you to tell me about your life before the war. I want to understand you, to know everything. She hesitated, the memories flooding her mind, days filled with laughter, the smell of her mother's cooking, the sound of her daughter's giggles. But all of it felt like a lifetime ago. There's nothing remarkable to tell, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Please, he urged, his sincerity shining through. I can only protect you if I understand what you've been through. You're not just a refugee to me. You're Maya, a woman with dreams and a beautiful spirit. The way he spoke her name sent a shiver down her spine. She swallowed hard, steeling herself against the vulnerability that threatened to overwhelm her. I had a life once, she began slowly. I was a teacher. I loved working with children, helping them learn and grow. Anya was my light, my reason to keep going. Alexander listened intently, his eyes never leaving her face. What happened to your school? Maya closed her eyes, the memories flooding back like a tidal wave. When the war started, everything changed. Schools were closed, and families were torn apart. I tried to keep Anya safe, to shield her from the horrors outside. But it was impossible. Her voice cracked, and she felt tears sting her eyes. We lost everything. My home, my friends. I had to flee to keep her alive. Alexander reached out, his hand covering hers once more, grounding her in the moment. You did what you had to do for her. That's what makes you strong, Maya. You fought for her, just like I'm fighting for you now. But it's not just about fighting, she said, her voice trembling. It's about the lives that have been shattered. I can't let you get hurt because of me. I refuse to be the reason for your suffering. He shook his head, his expression resolute. You're not a burden. You're worth fighting for. Maya's heart raced at his declaration, but before she could respond, her phone buzzed on the table, breaking the moment. She glanced at the screen, her heart dropping as she recognized the name. It was her friend Lila, someone she hadn't spoken to in weeks. Lila, she murmured, picking up the phone. The moment she opened the message, her heart sank further. Maya, they're getting closer. You need to leave. Now. Alexander furrowed his brow, concern etched across his face. What does it say? She swallowed hard, her hands trembling. It's Lila. She says they're closing in on me. I have to go. No. Alexander said firmly, standing up. You can't leave. We can find another way. We can. I can't put you in danger. Maya interrupted, panic rising in her throat. I won't let them hurt you or Anya. I have to protect you both. It's the only way. With that, she stood up, her heart pounding as she gathered her things. I'm sorry, Alexander, but I can't stay here. I have to go. Please, don't do this, he pleaded, desperation creeping into his voice. We can face this together. You don't have to run. But Maya was already stepping outside, the cold night air wrapping around her like a shroud. She knew this was the right decision, but her heart ached at the thought of leaving Alexander behind. "Maya," he called after her, but she didn't look back. She had to protect him, even if it meant sacrificing her own happiness. As the darkness enveloped her, Maya felt a mix of fear and determination surging within her. She had faced so much already, and she would do whatever it took to keep her daughter and Alexander safe, even if it meant stepping into the shadows once more. The trees loomed around her, and she pushed forward into the night, her heart racing with each step. She could not afford to fail now, not when so much was at stake. Alexander's heart raced as he approached the shelter on the outskirts of the city. The grim exterior of the building loomed before him, a stark reminder of the harsh realities that Maya and Anya had faced. He pushed the door open, the familiar creak echoing in the quiet space. Inside, the air was thick with tension, and the soft murmur of voices filled the room. As he scanned the faces of the refugees, a wave of desperation washed over him. He had searched tirelessly for Maya, and now, finally, he was here. "Maya," he called out, his voice breaking through the murmuring. The room turned, eyes wide with curiosity and concern. He spotted her in the far corner, her back turned to him as she knelt next to Anya, who was playing with a few makeshift toys. Relief flooded over him, but it was quickly overshadowed by the fear of how she would react to seeing him. Maya turned at the sound of his voice, and their eyes locked. For a moment, time stood still. Alexander could see the turmoil reflected in her gaze, the fear, the pain, the love. She stood up slowly, her expression shifting from shock to anger. "What are you doing here, Alexander?" she snapped, her voice low but fierce. "You shouldn't have come." He took a step closer, his heart pounding. "I had to find you. You can't just disappear like that. You don't understand how worried I was. I thought I lost you." Maya's eyes welled with tears, and she shook her head, her voice trembling. "You don't get it. They're looking for me. By being here, you're putting yourself in danger. You have to leave now." "I'm not leaving without you," he insisted, his voice steady but urgent. "You're not safe here. I can protect you, but you need to trust me." Maya looked down at Anya, who was blissfully unaware of the tension surrounding them. The little girl was busy stacking colorful blocks, her laughter a stark contrast to the heaviness in the air. Maya's heart ached at the thought of jeopardizing Anya's safety, but she also felt an undeniable pull towards Alexander. He had become her anchor in a world that had turned upside down. "Please, Maya," he pleaded, taking another step closer. "I can't stand the thought of you being in danger. Just come back with me. We can figure this out together." Tears streamed down Maya's face as she battled with her conflicting emotions. "What if they find you? What if they hurt you because of me?" she whispered, her voice cracking. "I won't let that happen." Alexander reached out, gently cupping her face in his hands. "You're not a burden, Maya. You're everything to me. I'd rather face any danger than live in a world without you." His voice softened, and he could see the flicker of hope in her eyes. "We can go into hiding, change our identities if we have to, but we need to do this together." Before Maya could respond, a shadow fell over them, and Alexander instinctively stepped in front of her and Anya. The atmosphere shifted, and he felt a chill run down his spine as he turned to face the newcomer. The man standing before them was tall, with a menacing presence and dark eyes that glinted with malice. It was the same figure who had watched them at the gala. "So, the little refugee has found herself a rich boyfriend," the man sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "Did you really think you could hide from us? You're coming with me." A surge of protectiveness surged through Alexander. "You won't take her," he said, his voice low and steady. "I'll fight you." Maya's breath quickened, and she clutched Anya close to her side. "Alexander, don't," she cried, panic lacing her voice. "You can't." The man laughed, a cruel sound that echoed in the small room. "You think you can protect her? You have no idea who you're dealing with." He took a step forward, and Alexander mirrored his movement, positioning himself as a shield between Maya and the threat. In that moment of tension, just as the atmosphere seemed ready to erupt, a familiar voice cut through the air. Step away from them. Alexander turned to see his mother, Helena, standing at the entrance. Her presence was commanding, and the look on her face was one of determination. The man's expression shifted from confidence to surprise, clearly recognizing the gravity of the situation. Helena. Alexander breathed, relief flooding through him. You shouldn't be here. Enough. Helena's voice was sharp as she stepped forward, her gaze fixed on the intruder. You don't want to mess with me. I have connections that you can't even begin to fathom. The man hesitated, glancing between Helena and Alexander, weighing his options. This isn't over, he spat, his bravado faltering. You'll regret this. Before he could make a move, Helena reached into her purse and pulled out a small device. I've already contacted the authorities. You won't get far. With that, she pressed a button, and the sound of sirens began to wail in the distance. The intruder's eyes widened in shock, and in a moment of desperation, he turned to flee. But Alexander was quicker. He lunged forward, grabbing the man's arm and twisting it behind his back. Don't even think about it, Alexander growled, his grip firm. The man struggled, but Alexander held him tightly, his heart racing with the adrenaline of the confrontation. Maya stood frozen, watching the scene unfold, her heart pounding in her chest. With Helena's presence, she felt a mix of relief and confusion. Could they really be safe now? As the sirens grew louder, Helena's face softened as she approached Maya and Anya. I'm here to help, she said gently. You're safe now. Maya's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were tears of gratitude. Thank you, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Alexander released the man, who fell to the ground, defeated and glaring up at them. You won't get away with this, he spat, but his bravado was gone. Within moments, the authorities arrived, rushing into the shelter. They apprehended the man swiftly, and as he was dragged away, Alexander felt a wave of relief wash over him. He turned to Maya, who was still trembling, and pulled her into a tight embrace. It's over, he murmured, holding her close. You're safe. Maya melted into his arms, feeling the warmth and security that he provided. Anya, sensing the change in atmosphere, stepped forward and hugged her mother's leg. Helena watched them with a mix of pride and concern. I'm sorry for everything, she said softly, stepping closer. I didn't mean to put you in danger, Maya. I thought I could help from a distance. Maya looked up at her, her heart swelling with appreciation. Thank you for coming. I didn't know what I would do without Alexander, but now I see that I have you both. The atmosphere in the shelter began to change, the tension dissipating as the authorities took control. Maya felt a flicker of hope ignite within her, a feeling she hadn't dared to embrace in so long. As she looked at Alexander, she knew they had a long road ahead, but for the first time, she felt like they could face anything together. Let's get out of here, Alexander said, his voice low and reassuring. He took Maya's hand, and she felt the strength in his grip. Together, they stepped out into the world, ready to face whatever came next, united in their fight for a brighter future. The night air in the secluded cabin was thick with tension and unspoken words. Maya paced the small living room, her heart racing as she replayed the events of the past few days. She could still feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins from the confrontation with the mysterious figure and the overwhelming relief that followed when they managed to escape. Yet, amidst that relief, guilt gnawed at her insides. Alexander sat on a worn-out couch, his head in his hands, lost in thought. The flickering light from the fireplace cast shadows across his chiseled features, making him look both powerful and vulnerable at the same time. After a moment of silence, he lifted his gaze to meet Maya's, a storm of emotions swirling in his deep blue eyes. You can't keep doing this, Maya, he said, his voice low but firm. Running away. Hiding. You're safe now with me. Maya stopped pacing, her heart clenching at the sincerity in his voice. Safe, she echoed, shaking her head. You don't understand. I thought I was protecting you by leaving. I didn't want them to find you. I didn't want to put you in danger. Alexander stood up, frustration evident in the way he clenched his fists. I chose to be with you, to protect you and Anya. This is my fight too. whether you like it or not. You can't just decide for me what I can handle." He stepped closer, his expression softening as he added, "You mean too much to me." Maya felt her defenses start to crumble as Alexander closed the distance between them. "But what if they come after you again? What if they find us here? I can't bear the thought of something happening to you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I won't let that happen," Alexander replied, his determination unwavering. "You have to trust me, Maya. Trust that I can protect you and Anya. You've already dragged me into this. There's no turning back now. We're in this together." He reached for her, his fingers brushing against her arm, igniting a warmth that spread through her body. Maya felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, overwhelmed by a mix of emotions. I don't know how to trust anyone anymore," she admitted, her voice breaking. "After everything I've been through, how can I let someone else shoulder my burdens?" "Because I want to," Alexander said earnestly, stepping even closer until their bodies almost touched. "I want to share your burdens, Maya. I want to be there for you. Not just as your protector, but as someone who loves you." Maya's breath hitched, his words unlocking something deep within her. The fear and uncertainty she had clung to began to dissolve in the warmth of his gaze. "You love me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," he replied, his eyes unwavering. "I do, and I'm not afraid to say it. I've never felt this way about anyone before. Not like this." In that moment, the walls that Maya had built around her heart began to crumble. She stepped forward, closing the distance between them, and before she could think twice, she reached up, cupping his face in her hands. Their lips met in a passionate kiss, igniting the flames of desire that had been simmering beneath the surface for far too long. It was a kiss filled with longing, fear, and the promise of something beautiful. As they pulled apart, breathless, Maya searched Alexander's eyes, looking for reassurance. "What if I'm not worth it?" she whispered. Alexander shook his head vehemently. "You are worth it, Maya. You and Anya are worth everything to me. I'll fight for you, no matter the cost." He brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle yet electrifying. "You've shown me what it means to live again, to feel deeply. I won't let fear dictate our future." Just then, the sudden sound of footsteps interrupted their moment. Maya's heart raced as she glanced toward the door, her body tense. "What was that?" she asked, anxiety creeping back in. "Stay here," Alexander ordered, his voice low and commanding. He moved toward the door, every muscle in his body taut with anticipation. Maya's heart pounded in her chest as she watched him, torn between wanting to stay close and needing to protect him. A moment later, the door swung open, revealing Helena, Alexander's mother, flanked by a couple of authorities. Relief washed over Maya, but it was quickly replaced by confusion. "Helena!" she exclaimed, stepping forward as Anya peeked out from behind her. "What are you doing here?" Helena's expression was a mixture of concern and determination. "I came as soon as I heard what happened. I've been working on this from the inside, using my connections to ensure your safety." She gestured to the officers behind her. "They're here to apprehend the attackers and ensure you're protected." Alexander stepped back, his surprise evident. "You knew? All this time?" he asked, his voice laced with a mix of admiration and frustration. "I did," Helena admitted, her gaze shifting to Maya. "I wanted to help you and Anya, but I also wanted to protect my son. I didn't want him to be involved in your troubles, but you've become family to us." Maya felt a swell of gratitude as she looked at Helena. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I didn't want to drag Alexander into my mess. I thought I was protecting him by running away." Helena stepped forward, placing a comforting hand on Maya's shoulder. "You don't have to do this alone anymore. You have us now, and we'll face whatever comes together." As the authorities moved in to secure the perimeter around the cabin, Maya felt a wave of relief wash over her. The weight of her past was finally starting to lift. She looked at Alexander, who was watching her with a mixture of pride and love. In that moment, she knew they had the strength to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Days turned into weeks as Maya, Alexander, and Anya settled into a new routine. The cabin became a safe haven, filled with laughter, warmth, and the promise of a brighter future. With each passing day, Maya felt her heart heal, the scars of her past slowly fading as she embraced her new life. One sunny afternoon, as they prepared a picnic outside, Alexander took Maya aside, his expression serious yet tender. "Maya, I've been thinking," he began, his voice steady. "After everything we've been through, I want to take this leap with you." Maya frowned, uncertainty creeping back in. "What do you mean?" "I want to propose," he said, dropping to one knee, pulling out a small velvet box from his pocket. "I want you and Anya to be my family. Will you marry me?" Time seemed to stand still as Maya's heart raced. Tears filled her eyes as she looked down at the ring, a beautiful symbol of hope and love. "Oh, Alexander," she breathed, overwhelmed. "Yes, yes, of course, I'll marry you." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Alexander stood up, enveloping her in a warm embrace. Maya laughed through her tears, joy flooding her heart. Anya, who had been watching from a distance, rushed over, her face lighting up with excitement. "Does this mean we're a real family now?" she asked, her eyes wide with wonder. Maya knelt down to Anya's level, brushing a hand through her hair. "Yes, my sweet girl. We are a family now, and nothing will ever change that." They shared a moment of pure bliss, the sun shining down on them as they embraced, their hearts full of love and hope. In that beautiful moment, Maya knew that they had finally found their way home.